we're going to start turning our face, I was going to say face toward Jerusalem. We're going to turn our attention to next steps and where do we go from here. And what we wanted to do is to share a few stories of how some people have taken their own next steps out of their own Biocommons experience. I'll just say just a word about this. So even though the Biocommons class has been taught, this is like maybe the 7th or 8th time, I can't remember, it's been radically changed from the very beginning. And last spring, when we offered it, was the very first time we even suggested that people come in teams, right? So actually this fall, you're the first ones, really, that we really said we want teams. And we discovered, I mean, we got there because we realized all these individuals coming here, like, it didn't work. I mean, it didn't not work, right? But it didn't have the kind of impact that we were looking for. So we're going to share some stories. Some are from individuals, like what individuals did, the next steps, and then at least one from how a congregation had begun to put some of this into practice. So who are we starting with? Toby, do you want to start with the teaching team?
Sure. My story's pretty quick. So when we found out we're going to have a second daughter, I decided to quit my job, be a stay-at-home dad. We're members of Salt and Light in Levin, here in this very building. So Dick Harmon, who's been mentioned here very often, he mentioned to my wife that there's this class that I might be interested in. He mentioned it to my wife, so my wife mentioned it to me. So I thought that this would be something, he thought that would challenge me intellectually, and I was like, fine, if I can get out of the house. I had no idea what I was getting into. I knew climate change was the idea, and I was thinking, yeah, that's not a good thing to, express it not very sophisticatedly, but I'd like to learn more about it. So I was thinking it's going to be more like a lecture thing, where I can go, someone tells me stuff, and I can think about it, go home. It's like, something different than taking care of kids and changing diapers all day long. So I talked to Dick, and he kind of told me a little bit about it. It's like, that sounds a little, I don't know, what? And I didn't really get it, but I still signed up, because there was something that was pulling me in, and I like Dick a lot, and I respect him deeply. He's a very wise man, so I thought, well, if Dick's recommending it, it can't be wrong. So I took the class last spring, and it was the Thursday tract, and it was super powerful. It was not as clear, I find, as this time around, but still, I got so much out of it. It was a much smaller group, and the stories, to me, the stories dragged me in most of all. People shared so many stories with each other, and that I just became a much better listener and started learning and seeing something in these one-to-ones. And if you think they're confusing this time around, you didn't want to be in last spring's class. Because the one-to-one there was, what? And I was super doubtful and skeptical. It's like, what are they talking about? I mean, come on. But I swear, something grabbed me, and something made me want to come back. And those Thursdays were the highlight of my week, and not only because I wanted to get out, but I was seriously looking forward to it. And it was although it was such a oftentimes overwhelming and, if you will, negative thing when you get stuck on the nose, that you kind of go home and you're sad, but still there was always hope. Always hope, and it just sucked me in. So I decided I wanted to take the class again. I decided I wanted to be a little more active, maybe be a table leader, and then ended up being part of the teaching team. So, and it's still, this time around, it's so totally different, and it's got its very own richness. So, and I'm just going to keep taking it and be involved. So it's just been very, very powerful. And I love how Solveig was talking about the ultimate question of faith, and I think that's what it takes, and that's what I'm just trying to keep building on. I have no idea what the answers are going to be. I just hope I can do more for myself and share with others and just keep moving to whatever direction we're headed. And yeah, thank you, Solveig, for making this possible. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Well, and I joined the teaching team after just signing up for taking it into the spring of 2012. So, same story. Chris, could you?
I'm Chris from Central Lutheran. So they asked me to channel my good friend Nathan Holst. So I'm speaking for Nathan, who is somewhere in between California and Duluth, Minnesota. Nathan and I have known each other for quite a while. It started with a connection that we both share with the Lutheran Volunteer Corps, and he came then to be a youth director part-time, very part-time at Central. And along with his work and many other things he was doing, he took the Biocommons course. I don't even know when it was, but
Spring of 2012.
okay. And Nathan would wax eloquent about how much it meant to him in terms of his own development. Because of his experience in the Biocommons course, he went on to take one of the Eco-Faith Recovery internships that are offered. In fact, I saw on the website or the email they have 2 available right now. They're trying to find people to offer them to, generally young people. Nathan took on an internship through Eco-Faith Recovery, and they asked the interns to do a project. The project Nathan chose to do was to create a curriculum for youth around this work, but specifically geared towards young people. And he used our youth group, high schoolers that he works with at Central, as his fishbowl. So Nathan created this curriculum that is an Eco-Faith youth camp, a week-long curriculum. And the idea of the curriculum was that it's shareable, it can be, he's got it written up, and it can be used anywhere with some supports in place. So it was 2 summers ago that he did this. The first time he again did it last summer. But 2 summers ago, my son Noah was able to participate in the Eco-Faith Youth Camp. And in fact, Nathan had a strong relationship with Noah, so he pulled Noah in. You know, the whole thing about building leaders, he asked Noah to work with him as on the leadership team, because Noah was senior in high school, to plan the Eco-Faith Youth Camp. So Noah had never done anything like that, had never been in a planning level. And it was so funny having him come home and say, Mom, I didn't realize how much work goes into planning a week. Really? There's a lot of work those people do who plan things for you. So he got to experience that, which was awesome, truly awesome. But it was really the week itself that Noah participated in that was honestly life-changing. And as a parent, how meaningful it is to see your child's world turned around I mean, he was on this path anyway, but the way that, thanks to Nathan's mentorship as his youth person at Central, but also this week-long experience that was for Noah and all of the participants, it was huge. I mean, I just Noah would come home and talk about it a little bit, and it was very meaningful to these young people that participated in. And Noah has a very deeply spiritual piece of him that has been fed and nurtured by Nathan that will be who he is forever as he continues to grow into himself. And what a gift, that experience that Nathan has, that he went on and shared it in such a meaningful way with others and really transforming their lives in really rich and powerful ways.
Nice, good question.
Yeah.
Were intentional relational conversations part of that youth camp curriculum?
I want to say yes, but I actually never. I'll ask Noah that question and report back next week.
Thank you.
Good. And talk to Chris if they've got the curriculum and the setup. So talk to her.
Well, and I would just connect you with Nathan. He has it. He wants to share it. It's really powerful. It's really great, and he's not only willing to share it, he's willing to help walk people through it because he believes in it really deeply. And I mean, he used the curriculum this past summer. We're hoping that somehow we find someone to make it happen again next summer. Don't know who that person is. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
maybe I should actually start by saying that I actually helped with the camp this year, and
Oh, yeah.
so I know some
Did
of
they
that.
do the one-on-one meetings?
Not in the same intentional way. There were some conversations, but it definitely was a little bit more relaxed, not the deep, trying to actually like really get at. These are high schoolers. You're trying to introduce it, not scare them. So I'm a member of St. James Lutheran Church, and we had a couple of our members, Jerry Grover and Willard Kneep, who, independent of one another, ended up taking this class. I think they were in different tracks. They weren't even there at the same time. Somehow got together, figured out that they'd taken the same class, and put together a series of presentations for the congregation. Their main focus on those was the work of Bill McKibben. So there was the hard facts, the numbers, and that really spoke to our congregation. The urgency of the situation really lit a spark. So from there, they formed a Caring for Creation committee and went through trying to figure out like what members of the congregation were doing already to try and fight against the climate crisis, and then they had a bigger goal of what St. James as an institution can do. We made some small changes within the congregation. I know several weeks ago Dorothy mentioned adding recycling bins that we did not have before. Switched out some of the lights to more efficient ones that not only are brighter but also save us money. And now we're actually in the process of developing a resolution that, if passed by the congregation, would make St. James an official Caring for Creation congregation. We have 4 members from the congregation class this go around, so we'll be up to 6, and are now just kind of trying to figure out how we can not only use the information from this class on an environmental level, but also like the intentional relational meeting conversations, and apply that to our strategic plan and truly make the congregation an organized mediating community. So that's where we are.
What is, who recognize these groups as caring for creation congregations?
Can you answer that, Karen? What is officially
Is that
mean? Who recognizes them?
I think it's an ELCA.
Okay, that's what I say. It's an ELCA, so
Lutheran's
evangelical.
Restoring Creation.
Okay.
ELCA.
Yeah, right.
Restoring?
Lutherans Restoring Creation is an ELCA institute organization.
Lutherans Restoring
Yeah.
Creation.
So it's a church-wide deal.
And they have a lot of resources.
And it looks at all aspects: education, worship, property. So it kind of breaks. I can't remember. It seems like there's one more.
Personally, I have a little problem with that term. At our church, which is Lutheran, our group is Care for Creation also, because I don't feel like Lutherans can restore the creation alone. So.
Thank you very much. We'll write to church-wide.
And then two more quick stories. So the very first rounds of organizing the Biocommons were just the economic analysis. Didn't have all the spiritual connections. And they happened here in the Levin community. And two significant things came out of that. One was that a few people together really, they watched the Mondragon Worker Co-op video and said, we want to do something like that. It's small, but it's here, and it's called Critical Bath Soaps. And if you would like to buy your soap here and support the cooperative, you can right over there. And again, I mean, it's small, but like it was created because of an experience in this class and an understanding, an awakened understanding of what might be possible, right? And then the other thing is that one of the things that they did, and when I share this, you might be either relieved or sad that we didn't do this in this class, but they had everybody write down essentially a dollar amount that was their net worth, like their liquid assets. Like what did they have in liquid assets, right? Put them all together. Right, small group, like 15 people maybe, right? And they realized they had way more than they even possibly imagined, hundreds of thousands of dollars in this group. And they said, well, what could we do with $500,000 or whatever it was, right? What could we do with that? And from that came the money move. So, what, hundreds of people now have consciously moved their money into Advantage Credit Union from banks, and it has slowed because of life and a bunch of other things, but the vision was, and some of the pieces are still in place, to have enough people that are members of Advantage. Then you get seats on the board and you get votes, right? And to work to create a micro lending pool within the Advantage Credit Union piece, right? So that's a small group of 15 people, right? And again, it's a small giant step, right? But that's what it is. So just some examples of how people have taken this class and moved it forward. So we're going to just take a couple minutes, and on the back of your Neil Young song lyrics, are some next steps. This list is not exhaustive, and we're just going to take a couple minutes to go over it right now, but the point for this is for your team, when you meet this week, to take this and really examine it together and discern it together and say, okay, what's our next step? What's my next step as an individual? What's our next step as a team? How can the teams support the individuals taking their next steps? Okay, so just briefly, in your folder at the very beginning, you've got these practices for awakening leadership. This has come out of a lot of years of discernment and reflection and work out of eco-faith recovery. And in this are 6 practices, most of which we have been doing in this class, so they're not unfamiliar to you right now, all of which will, when practiced, move you to becoming more of a mediating institution or community, right? It will move you in this direction. And restore, or I guess begin, the opening up the sacredness of your work and your relationships with one another. So I ask you also to bring this, the big version or whatever, also to your team meeting, and to take some time to reflect on these, right? And how you can implement them. It's for real. This is like the recovery program. This is like the 12 steps, okay? And in 12-step groups we say, it works if you work it.
Because you're worth it.
So work it because you're worth it. That's what we say. It works if you work it, so work it because you're worth it, okay? You are all worth it. Your congregations are all worth it. So work it. Optional support for that is that the Beyond Fossil Fuels group of Eco-Faith Recovery has a monthly Grounding for Action meeting. We are just on Thursday shifting to this model for group meetings. Almost exactly, just tweaked a little bit, okay? So if you want some experience, like how do we actually use these practices in a meeting kind of setting, voila, you can come and you can practice it there. Okay, that's one thing. Second piece, building capacity through the Biocommons process. As Toby suggested, consider joining the teaching team for the next round. We don't know when that's going to be, but indicate some interest if you are interested. Recruit for that process. whenever that's gonna be. I'm working up from the bottom here. And we had hoped, and we have some of the pieces in place to help you if you want and feel like you could either are or could be ready to teach some of the elements or the entirety of the class in your own congregation. Okay? Now, you might just go, you've gotta be kidding me. But you might take some pieces, right? That's why we've been videotaping. Hopefully those will be available. We have the outlines of all the sessions that we've done. So, and all those will also be available to you online. So we're trying to make it, we're trying to expand the leadership and the spread of this as much as we can. And then just share the stories. Share the stories of what happened for you here in this process with your congregations. Okay. Third, begin working towards the second yes. Okay? There's already some, we already had some conversations in the break about doing some research on how to explore having an impact more deeply. You can see this building relationships. We did very, very little, almost no racial, gender, ethnic, like any of those kind of analyses in this class. Lacking, right? So let's do some more research and build our process here, but also any steps forward has to have those kind of analyses built in as well. And then just building relationships with other eco-faith congregations. And if you're doing something, if you're moving forward as a congregation, invite the rest of us along, right? That's how it works. That's how it works. That's why we build all these relationships. It's not for nothing, right? Then because I've had a conversation with John, I can call him, right? And say, John, Wilderness Way is doing this thing, and this is important to us. Would you be willing to participate with us? And would you talk about it with some other people that you know who would be willing to join us? Cool, great, Chris, I have a relationship with you. I could, right? This is how it works. Okay. And then keeping connected, all right? I'm not going to go through all these keeping connected bullet points here, but you got it. Okay. So we are going to. I'm just going to open it up to this question. Oh, Cecil, you got a question.
How old do you have to be to come to this class? Biologically, spiritually?
Like a young limit or an old limit? What do you what?
No, I was just talking to Heather about what she's doing and why I asked the question.
Right. Are you talking about a high school kid? Yeah? No, I mean, that's why Nathan did what he did, is to bring the content of this into youth. Now, you know the people that you're working with. You know the kids. If they could do this, that'd be awesome. And if this is too much, then let's figure out how to take the pertinent pieces and make the connection. Totally. Yeah, Dorothy.
Actually, a question for Chris. Did Nathan consider taking that to Andrea at Lutherwood, the youth and family camp outside of Eugene, Lutheran? I mean, that'd be an absolutely cool new week for them to do at Lutherwood.
I also want to ask the question. So we've already asked a couple questions. So what challenges or barriers in these next steps do you see for yourself or your community? Like as you're just thinking about this, and you're outside, you're going, oh yeah, that's cool, that's cool. And then inside you're going, okay, there's no way, whatever. Okay, so what's the inside? Right, what's the inside that's coming up? Right, Chris.
So that's a good place for me to share this because it is kind of a barrier. And something that came, an awareness that came to me, like this light bulb went off, about this whole concept of leadership. So EcoFit has been about awakening leadership, right? I've been coming to these meetings. I've been hearing this for a really, really, really long time. And I think the idea of being a leader can be really scary because it means, uh-oh, they're gonna expect more of me. I'm gonna have to show up. I'm gonna have to work harder. You know, I'm not gonna be able to just be there and passively sit back and listen. And so there's, you know, a little bit of this like, okay, I should be a part of this, but oh, I'm gonna have to work harder. I'm not sure I want that leader label put on me. But I had a conversation with Robin one day where I was like, oh, and I just saw it completely differently because I know that I have, and probably many of you have been in situations where you're working with a team and there's a leader and that person says, you know, it's collaborative, all of our ideas matter, but really that person's idea is the one that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. That person is saying we can all bring our ideas and we can all be leaders, but that's not how it actually really is. And what I understood from Robin is we're trying to make it actually really be that way. We're trying to, with integrity, say, we're sharing this, we're letting go of my ownership and my outcome. And a lot of leaders don't. They say that that's what it's about, but it's not what it's about. It's about bringing the team to the table so that my agenda can happen. And what this is about is like, no, it's truly with integrity, making it be our collective agenda. And that's what the term leadership is about. Which is different. I mean, then it's like, okay, it's not saying you have to be expected to do more work. It's not a scary concept. It's an inclusive concept. So, yeah, I didn't get that until recently. So, good. And definitely a barrier. Like, uh-oh, make me work harder. Yeah.
Comment over here.
Yeah.
Or a question, I guess. One of the reasons I'm skeptical, or at least curious, I'll say curious, is I think one-on-ones are a beautiful thing, especially in my parish. I think we do implement them. It doesn't mean that they lean towards anything climate change or environmental justice related, right? So, from what it sounds like in this class, we're promoting at the base of everything relationship. We're not promoting a specific agenda. We don't even have a vision clearly mapped out of what we're going for in the end. Rather, we're promoting exploring relationship with each other and seeing where it goes. Especially since I'm the only one from where I go to church, I'm just doubting the fruit of an intentional one-on-one conversation with people in my community with this as like a backdrop, you know?
Except if you start with Father, what's his name?
Dave.
If you start with Father Dave, he may get it because he already gets relational meetings. He understands that. And to ask him about a question that goes towards this. So to get back to your first question, it's a yes and a yes. The skill of individual meetings and relationship building should be open-ended and should go where the pressures lead you. There are also applications of individual meetings to get at questions, to get deeper on issues about what people think, what they feel. And so the individual relationship is a way to build a connection among people within an institution, or like in here across institutions, but it's also a way to gauge leadership ability, passion around issues. So you can, and you don't want to do your first one in this way, but the idea is as we do relational meetings over time, multiple times, hopefully with the same person, we will have the opportunity to explore directional topics. So it's a yes and a yes.
I'm involved with 3 different groups that have intentional relational conversations as a piece of it, and the organization that was set around MACG. That's MACG, Medical Alliance for Common Good. There's this organizing Biocommons, the work I'm doing with Phoenix out of the correctional facilities. All of them using the same basic material in terms of organizing. In the MACG model, it's a same, all the models are the same. But in MACG, the orientation is listening in order to discern and figure out what issue is important to people. In the Phoenix, they already have figured out that there's some affiliation that they have about people that are coming out of prison and making it possible for them to exist in society. So that was an issue that came up and now is a specific target. Biocommons is in a similar way. There's a target we have about preserving the environment, and that has been an issue that has come up enough that we're finding it resonates with a lot of people. So what I'm trying to say is that it isn't just that you can't use this technique if you have an agenda. That's not true. You can certainly speak about what you believe and what you feel and see if there is a connection with the people that are there. And I think that's what the Biocommons is attempting to do. We're trying to find out, we're trying to help people see the urgency of the issue, and then it becomes their issue as well as ours, as well as yours. So I think it's both and, not either or.
Well, so these are for you to look at, grapple with yourself, and then with your team whenever you need.